How are you? Welcome to my kitchen. I have just discovered a culture, a cuisine, a whole style of cooking that I knew nothing about as little as a month ago. It's the cooking of Poland. I've discovered that because I'm hanging around Chicago, as you know, these days. And the other day I was in a neighborhood. I walked for 3 blocks and no one would speak English to me, only Polish. And the restaurants and the sausage shops were simply incredible. Poland, you know, is a very, very old nation. And the fact that America has just heard about it, by that I mean we've just begun talking about it in the last few years, is really tragic. But until the election of the good Bishop of Rome, John Paul II, and until the people of Poland began striking and the labor unions, the whole works, we knew nothing about Poland. So today I want you to learn something about Poland through their cuisine. And it's a very rich cuisine with royalty that moved in and out of the Polish throne from the rest of Europe and bringing with them all kinds of new flavors that the Poles then incorporated into their own cooking. And the Poles, in turn, gave back to the visiting royalty sauerkrauts and sour creams and pickles and heavy, heavy, heavy rich food. One of the heaviest things I've ever seen in my life, which really turns out pretty well, is a pierogi. It's a dumpling raised to glory, and I want to start today with the Polish dumpling, the pierogi. First of all, the dough is very, very simple. I've made an egg batter for you. Let me show you what kind of thickness I want here. There it is. I've made an egg batter for you of a cup of flour, 1 egg, 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and 4 tablespoons of water, and it will give you this lovely, lovely diet dough. I rolled mine out on an Italian spaghetti machine. Do you have one of those? It's a snap to use, and I rolled my dough out very, very quickly on this machine. Putting it on number 5, if you have an atlas at home, it'll work well for you, and you'll get a nice thin dough. And I'll show you how to cut these. I'm using a jelly jar. You can use a dumpling cutter. You can use anything you want, but we want them. I don't know how big that is. How big is that? It's about 3 inches in diameter, I think, isn't it? About right. There we go. We'll cut 3 of these, and while I'm showing you how to fold these, I want to get a filling going, and the filling that I'm going to make today for you, well, there are 3 fillings really, but my favorite one consists of the following. We want a little butter in a hot frying pan. Yes, it's going to be tons of butter and sour cream today. We're going to have a field day. Butter in a frying pan, and we're going to add some sauerkraut to this, and just do this by taste. You know what I mean? Some sauerkraut, and we'll brown that for a bit, along with some Polish mushrooms. Now, we can't get Polish mushrooms in this country unless you want to pay, I don't know, $60 a pound. But the closest thing that you find, and it is a dried mushroom we want, the closest thing that you can find is available in most fancy delis and import shops, good food import shops, and it's simply called a dried mushroom. It's common in this country. A lot of these come from Argentina. Some of them are domestic. But when you soak them, they turn into the most heavenly, rich, you see. This is about the same amount as in the first bowl, you see. Check the size here. These things really swell up. Look at, you see. You have a marvelous mixture of mushrooms. So if you're paying $10 or $12, maybe $15 a pound, it's all right. It's all right. You'll get there. Because in the long run, you see, they're very rich and rather inexpensive. I'm going to grab a small handful here, 3 or 4 nice mushrooms, chop them up, and put them in my sauerkraut for a sauerkraut and mushroom-filled pierogi. Absolute heaven. I promise you, these dishes are just terrific. In they go to the frying pan. We want to simmer these for a bit. You don't want to quite dry this out, but you certainly want to brown it a bit, you see. And I'm also going to add to that just a pinch of sugar. Where's my sugar bowl? I'm using a little bit of brown sugar, just a smidgen. There we go. And remember, we have quite a bit of butter in there to be very, very rich. And I also want to add a bit of pepper. And we'll saute that till it browns down a bit, and we'll have a great filling. Let me show you what it looks like when we're finished. You can see the difference in color right away. You see how obvious that is? Now you see what I've done? It doesn't take long. So now we need to grab a dumpling, and I'll roll him up. Pull him off. I'm using a marble board here. It works great. That was a little ill-shaped, isn't it? I pulled on the dough too hard and stretched it out of whack, but that's right. Just put a smidgen inside the dough, and then you bring the sides up and pinch it all the way around, and you have a pierogi. Yes, you can do this with a wonton skin. It was nice of you to ask. As a matter of fact, I did some to try. I'll see how they hold up today. There's one pierogi filled with a mixture of sauerkraut, imported mushrooms soaked, dried mushrooms soaked, or domestic if you find them. Then I added a bit of pepper, lots of butter, and a tiny pinch of sugar to make a sauerkraut and mushroom filling. The second one that I have for you is made of egg yolk. Well, I'll give you the whole recipe. You have a half a pound of cottage cheese, and I drained it very carefully. You don't want it to be too wet, you see. And I added 1 egg yolk, and a teaspoon of melted butter. Just pour it right in there, and a tiny pinch of salt. And it's not sweet, and it's not dry. It's very, very rich. And again, just fold him over. You see? All right. Now the third one that I'm going to make for you, and I've already made a big plate of these. The third one I'm going to make for you sounds a little strange. It's a potato-filled dumpling. Now, if you're Jewish, you're going to say, good Lord, is he giving the Poles credit for the knish? No, I'm not giving them credit, but there's a great similarity here. I'll give you the recipe for this one, too. This is a mashed potato. It's already cooked up. And then I've sautéed a quarter of a yellow onion and stirred that into my mashed potato. 1 potato, 1/4 of a yellow onion, sautéed and stirred into the potato. And you'll notice, I think you can see the spots in here. There's cottage cheese in there, a couple tablespoons of cottage cheese, drained, of course, and some salt and pepper. Whoops, I think I may have to pack that one down. You've got to be careful when you roll these, or you'll get a pillow of air in there. You'll see you'll get a pocket of air, and then when you put it in boiling water, the thing's going to blow up like the Hindenburg, and it'll be just tragic. All right, here they go. Let me put some in boiling water, and when they come to the top, when they begin to float, you simply give them another 5 minutes, and they're all done. Got that? Put them in the pot, and when they come to the surface, when they all begin to float, I better put some salt in that water too. When they all begin to float, let them cook another 5 minutes, and we're all set. So let me add some more pierogi. Here's some more cheese pierogi. Aren't these gorgeous things? Look at that one's floating already. Can you see? This little rascal's out. Get down there. Which means, of course, that I had a pocket of air in there. They should hit the bottom with a boom. I have a friend here in my kitchen who's Polish, and we were just talking about about how heavy a pierogi could be. He remembers from his childhood, I'm sure, someone who used to make these things as heavy as lead. And I'm afraid that you could do that too unless you're careful. You want to roll the dough quite thin. They're not to be heavy at all. They're to be light and fluffy. That was the sauerkraut one. And the cheese is in there. We have one more coming. Whoops, excuse me, I was wrong. Here's the mushroom and sauerkraut. I want to get them all in the pot, and we'll get them boiling, and then we can go on to another dish here. You notice I put a little flour on my plate, you see, so that they wouldn't stick, and then I've covered them with saran wrap so that I could make several different kinds without any difficulty. And for heaven's sakes, have all of this stuff ready before your guests show up. It's just awful to be out in the kitchen telling them, oh, we're going to eat well, maybe Tuesday. You know, don't do that to your guests. It's not fair. I'm even upset when it happens to my children, you know, when we all come into the kitchen when we're ready. Here are a few that I did with wonton skins. You remember a wonton skin you buy in any supermarket now, and it's a square noodle so that your pierogi is going to look like this, you see. You moisten, let me show you how to do this. You moisten the edge of the wonton skin with water on just one, two sides that join, thusly. There we go. Oh, that sauerkraut and mushroom is cooking away here in my right nostril, and it's just heavenly. Then we'll put in a bit of filling. Let's do a potato one here. You see, I have two sides wet, and then we'll bring it over and seal it very, very carefully, being very careful to push out all of the air, or the thing will just swell up like mad, and you don't want that. There it is, you see? Let's put in a couple of these, too. These are both cheese, all on this plate. Using a wonton skin, and we'll be able to judge the difference when we have a tasting, a formal pierogi tasting, in a few minutes. All right, they'll all float in a minute, and we'll be set. Let's turn off my other filling here, and we're going to go on with some rather heavy dishes. At least I think they're heavy, and they're great. They're very substantial cooking. One of the other things that we've learned about in our culture is something that we really haven't learned about. That is to say, we think we know something and we really don't. It's called a kielbasa or a Polish sausage. And it's not at all what we think it is. The Polish sausage, I went to a Polish sausage factory to gather a few tidbits for you. You know what the term kielbasa means? In Polish, it simply means sausage. In our country, Polish sausage, or the term kielbasa, refers to one kind, namely a very medium coarse grind garlic sausage with a bit of pepper in it and sometimes some allspice. You know the one. It looks like this, you see? You see? You've seen this. Buy it in any supermarket. This one, however, was made by a neighbor down the street. This one by a sausage factory on West Michigan. This one is a different one from the same factory, and all of these are also Polish sausages. This whole platter. This one, for instance, is called a Krakow. That's where Pope John Paul was cardinal. Remember, he was Bishop of Krakow? Archbishop of Krakow. I'm not sure. He was one of the two when he was cardinal, before he was elected to the papacy. This is his village sausage. It's heavenly. It's big chunks of ham in it. This is a blood sausage with barley in it. Can you see the chunks of barley? This is so good. And here's a thin, dried Polish sausage. It's heavenly. And then this is their regular Polish. I walked out of there with the bags, our arms were just incredibly heavy. I was buying all kinds of sausages. And I've learned a great deal. But I have a recipe for you that you can make at home if you can't get good Polish from a professional sausage maker. Here's a recipe that's very, very simple, and you can make them in little plastic seal bags. You know what I mean? I'll give you the recipe now. I've got 1.5 pounds of good pork. See, and I've ground this up. To that, I'm going to add, I suppose 6, 7 cloves of garlic. Oh, you can't put too much garlic in Polish sausage. That's just impossible. There's about 3 or 4 already here. These are rather small. I'm going to put in a couple more. And then we need an entire tablespoon of black pepper. Now, you know that I tell you every time we're together, for heaven's sakes, don't let someone else grind your pepper. You don't know what they're going to put in it. So I've already ground mine, so you'll forgive me if you don't see my pepper mill this time. I've already ground it up here for you. I want a tablespoon of black pepper. That's plenty. And then we want a bit of salt, probably a teaspoon or so. That should do us. And the kick here, the strange flavor, is allspice. And we want just a teaspoon. You don't want to know it's there. It's just to be supportive. Just a half teaspoon is plenty. And finally, 1/3 cup of water to make a saline solution from that salt, you see. And that will preserve the sausage. You want the recipe again now? We have 1.5 pounds of pork. We have 1/2 teaspoon of allspice. We have a tablespoon of black pepper, 6 cloves of garlic, a little bit of salt. Now then, if you want to have a smoked sausage, or at least taste like a smoked sausage, let me show you a secret. I have here a product that is called a liquid smoke. And if you put in just a dash of this, so, just a little bit, it'll give you a very nice flavor, and will taste much more like the kind of Polish sausage that you're used to from the market. There it is. Now, we'll mold those into little cakes. Get my hands cleaned off here, and I'm going to put them in seal bags, those little plastic bags that you close up with an electric heater, you know what I mean, and then you can boil in these. It works great because what we're doing is making a skin, you see, for the sausage this way. So we'll mold one of these into a sausage shape. Oh, maybe that's a little large. The point here is to boil these ahead of time. Cook them ahead of time, and then you can just warm them up very easily. Whoops, excuse me, I've got to check my pierogi. Good heavens. They're just jumping all around. I think they're about done. How much fun. They look great. Let's give them another. They're all at the top now, so let's give them another minute or so. Anyhow, you put the sausage, you see, into these little bags. And then later on, you put this in a heater, you see, one of those seal jobbers. I've got one over here. I've done a whole bunch of these. And then cook them for about 35 minutes in boiling water. Then you're ready to go. You can open them up and use them for sandwiches. You can use them for salads. You can use them for all sorts of good things. Let me show you what they look like. They really did come out well. I'm impressed with this crazy method. It works. This one had a hole in the bag. Look at this. I didn't seal it properly. It's full of water. Look at it. You see? So be careful. This one is perfect. No water in it. So there's one. I'm going to get a plate for these, huh? My hands are so greasy from all this that I can't pick up a plate. There we are. Here's one for you. And here's another. You get the idea. And you can serve them like this. Or you can save them and warm them up in this bag anytime you like. So there's your own homemade sausage recipe. It's not bad at all. As a matter of fact, I think it's quite good. Now, if you're Polish and you're sitting at home laughing at me and telling me about your grandmother's recipe, stop laughing and send me the recipe, all right? Let's get some action here. This is the best I could do today, and it's very nice. It's very good. All right, let's check out the pierogi. Heavenly stuff. I think they're done. Let's get a big platter. We want to drain these, of course, very carefully before we put them on the platter. Oh, I had pierogi the other night at a restaurant, the one I was telling you about on Milwaukee. And the woman makes pierogi you wouldn't believe. She had blueberries, fresh blueberries. This is in the middle of dinner. You have fresh blueberry pierogi with tons of sour cream. Look at that. The wonton skin fell apart. You see that one? The square one? You see it? It's just a goo ball. Back into the pot. We don't need it. But the ones that we made from scratch held fine. They're gorgeous. So let me put some butter on these. Here we are. Oh, better melt some butter. We want to pour some butter on these, and then a bit of brown sugar, brown breadcrumbs, and that'll give us a classic plate that'll look just like a good Polish dinner for you. Let me show you a couple of other dishes for a Polish dinner. I have a pot roast going here that is one of the strangest, most marvelous flavors I've ever run across. But again, you need these mushrooms. If you can't find them, write to an import house. Every major city in the country has somebody in the city that will sell you dried mushrooms. And buy a big sack and store them in a sealed jar, a quart jar, and keep them in your refrigerator. I have 2 pounds in my refrigerator in Tacoma that I bought in San Francisco before I came to Chicago. Big jar. The kids love them. We make marvelous sauces with them. They're just terrific. So here's one pot roast. There we go. You can use a bottom round, use anything you want, but you want to brown the pot roast first. You see, I browned mine rather severely. And we'll throw it in a kettle here. I've got to get enough space to work because I'm waiting for my butter for the pierogi. So let me give you the ingredients now. This is a very interesting dish. I want to throw into the pot, I need some onions, here we are. Throw into the pot 1 onion along with my pot roast, you see. There we go, a nice onion. And I want to put in 3 dill pickles. Dill pickles in a pot roast? Yes, it's called pot roast with dill. It's a marvelous dish. There we go. Put in the dill pickles. Are you with me on this recipe? Then I want a handful of mushrooms, and I'm using the dried ones. A handful, I'm putting in half a cup. Actually, it's 1.5 ounces before they were soaked. 1.5 ounces of dried mushrooms soaked, and it wouldn't hurt to put in a little of the juice. There we go. And I want a half a dozen peppercorns. Measure it out. You have never heard me measure anything. Just put in some peppercorns, will you? And some bay leaf. Couple of these are awfully small. I was going to say one nice big one, but those are so tiny. Let's not even fiddle around. That's the whole works. I have in the pot then the brown roast. Weighs about 3 pounds. I added 1 large chopped yellow onion, 3 or 4 dried mushrooms soaked for about 1.5 ounces, 6 peppercorns, a bay leaf, and 3 dill pickles all chopped up. And now I want to add to my pot about 1/4 cup of bouillon, beef bouillon, or perhaps your own good stock. I hope you have some left. I'll put this on to cook now for 2 hours. And at the end of 2 hours, let's see, there is a pot roast here somewhere if I can decide which kettle it's in. Ah, I found it. By sheer weight, I found it. There we go. Oh, listen, I don't want to take that off. Let me tease you for a minute here. I forgot. At the end of the 2 hours of cooking, I want you to put a pint, or half pint, I should say, 1 cup, a half pint of sour cream into this, and that's how we're going to make the gravy for this beautiful pot roast. And stir this in. You see, the pickles and the sour cream will now blend. Good Lord, this thing is rich. You can't believe it, it's so rich. There we are. Let's turn him over here. There we go. He's just delicious. You have a pot roast with pickles and mushroom. Gives it a most unusual flavor. And you're right, it's murder, it's so rich. But I enjoy it. Let's put that out so that you'll know. Actually, I need the room is what I need. Ah. Okay, we'll get the blend in with our sausages here. The food looking a little heavy? You haven't seen anything yet. Let me get you going on another one. It's time to put the pierogi out, too. Get the butter on these. Just put a smidgen on the top so that they don't stick. And we want some breadcrumbs to add a little color. There we go. Now remember, we have all 3 kinds on there. So when you serve these, you're going to have to really know which one is the sauerkraut and mushroom, because that's the best one. All right? Let someone else eat the potato and the cheese. Now you're yelling at me. So potato's your favorite. Sauerkraut's mine. It's just delicious. Finally, let's do a hunter stew. This is a strange dish, and I don't know why they call it a hunter stew, because in the old days in Poland, they used to work a week on this dish. They would just keep adding things to it, and they tell me that you're not allowed to eat this the first day. This is really not a good thing until the 7th or until the 2nd day, you see. But I'll tell you how it's done to start with, and we can go from there, all right? Into our pot. I'm using a large, large kettle because this recipe just goes on and on and on. Into our pot, I have placed a 1/4 pound of salt pork, and I've sautéed a couple of large onions, you see? Then I want to add to that about 4 quarts of sauerkraut. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that 4 quarts of sauerkraut? I think that's about right. All right, does that look about right to you? And we're going to thicken this whole thing. My heat isn't up high enough on this one, but the other one's hot, so it won't matter. Flour, here it is. I'm going to add a couple tablespoons of flour. Sprinkle that in carefully. so that you don't get any lumps. What we want to do is thicken the broth that this is going to make, you see? I caught him. It wasn't 2. We put in 3. Oh, all right. You're watching too close. Watching too closely. There we go. Now, the other things that can go in here, of course, are up to the hunter. Depends on what he brings back. I think that's why they call it hunter stew. Either that or he comes home and he's so hungry he's going to shoot you if you don't produce something in a hurry. And my Lord, if it takes 2 days to make this thing, I don't know how the hunter lasted. So it's got to refer to the fact that he would bring home all kinds of game. And into this you can place just about anything you would like in the way of meats, but they must all be cooked ahead of time. You understand me? They're all cooked ahead of time. So I'm going to put in about 1.5 pounds of beef, cut up into cubes and browned. And then we've got to add some Polish sausage, right? So we'll cut up a good chunk of Polish sausage into bite-sized nibbles. Everything's in the bite-sized chunk here. And we'll put that in the pot. And how about a chunk? Here's some pork that I've cooked ahead of time. And we can put this, I simmered with a little bit of a carrot and celery, you know, just a nice soup stock. Put that in the pot. And let's see, how about some ham? Isn't this a kick? And the thing just goes on and on and on. And it doesn't take long to cook, you see, if all your meats are cooked ahead of time. But in my house, I like sauerkraut cooked until it calms down. Can I use that word? I really don't like it to be terribly sharp. There we go. All right. Now, we need a chicken. I have a whole chicken cooked over here. So in he goes. And this whole, there's a carrot. I cooked the carrot in the same kind of broth with a bit of, I cooked the chicken in the same kind of broth with a bit of carrot and of course, some celery leaf. There. Now, we will simmer that whole works. Let me give you the recipe again. Where's a lid for this? We'll bring that whole works to a simmer and cook him for about a half an hour until everything's hot and good, you see. And then we'll add a cup of red wine and we'll bring him to the table with class. I have one and I'll show it to you. Let me give you the whole recipe again for a bigos, a classic bigos. Remember, you can use beef, pork, rabbit, chicken, duck, ham, sausage, veal, anything that runs by the front of the cabin, you see, used to be nailed and eventually would wind up in this big pot. So we sauteed in our kettle, first of all, the pork, salt pork with some onion, a couple of nice yellow onions chopped up very coarsely. And then we added 4 pounds of sauerkraut. Did I put in some dried mushrooms? I want some of those too. Put in some dried mushrooms with your dish. And we added to our sauerkraut a couple of tablespoons of flour to give us a nice thickening. You see? I heard a rock fall in here. Yes, there is. It was a rock in my mushrooms. Wow. Better be careful with that one. And a little broth wouldn't hurt, would it, huh? There we go. That'll cook beautifully. And I've also added some pepper. We'll put some black pepper in here. And then I want to add a bit of brown sugar to calm it down. Just a tablespoon of brown sugar. And let that cook for about 2 hours. Don't forget the pepper. Let that cook for about 2 hours, and you'll have something that's very tender. 1 hour, and then we'll add the wine. 2 hours is on the pot. Boy, am I confusing. If you want recipes, write me. Be glad to send them to you. You think you're having trouble understanding this. I'm not even sure which kettle has what in it here. It is now ready. The bigos is ready to go. We have the brown sugar. That's really our only seasonings, the brown sugar, pepper, and the mushrooms themselves. So we're ready to seal that up and let it go. And then after an hour of cooking, we're going to add a cup of red wine. And that's ready on this pot right now. See, here it is already. Oh, measure your wine very carefully. Oh, don't be silly. What for? And bring that to a simmer again. And look at let me dish that up. Isn't that colossal? Isn't that colossal? All the different meats are sitting there enjoying one another's company. Enjoying themselves indeed. All right. And you can imagine what a feast this would make for the hunter and the huntee. The hunter and the hunter's wife and the child. This is a traditional dish in Poland. It's served on great festivals and all, but I've been warned by my friends that I must not give you the impression that this is any good on the first day. You're not even supposed to eat it on the first day. You're supposed to eat it on the second day. So there we have it. You know what I want to try right now? I want to try the pierogi. If you have any questions, why, I'll certainly answer them when you write for recipes. Let me taste the pierogi. That's the one that I think is going to excite me the most. I love these little creatures. Let's try one with the sauerkraut, and I'll try and... Well, here's the cheese one, too. All right, let's try it out here. Let's tell what I think. You don't want these things to be too thick. You have to roll the dough fairly thin, you see. See, the sauerkraut is just gorgeous. And mushroom. You know what? Irina, dear, these are almost as good as yours. They're almost as good as yours. Absolutely terrific food. Today we've tried to prepare, not tried, we've done it, a pot roast with dill. Easy to do, takes a long time to cook. Last half hour, remember, you had sour cream. We made our own Polish sausage and put them in a plastic seal bag. We made pierogi with 3 different fillings, heavenly things. And finally, we centered down on a hunter's stew, a bigos from Poland, containing any meat that you can possibly get your hands on, simmered with sauerkraut, a little bit of brown sugar, and finally a classic killing with red wine. That's typical of Polish cuisine. It may look a little heavy to you, but remember, things are very, very rich. And you can spread them out over a great buffet and have a lovely time and extend meat because you won't eat so much of a single thing. And you can enjoy the Polish table. And to all of my friends here in Chicago who are Polish, I appreciate the special care you've given me. Dziękuję. This is the Frugal Gourmet. I'm glad we could be together today. Until I see you again, I bid you peace. Bye-bye.